Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm wheeling and dealing again, everyone. Hi, everyone. Can't stop me. I'm always in the news. What's up?
That's a doozy.
Yeah, we got a short show today, by the way.
Yeah.
Just real quick. We have a short show today. Orioles, Yankees rubber match. I watched a good amount, actually, of their game last night. It was awesome. Rubber match today, 4:05 first pitch, so 3:30 pregame. So we'll just be with you here for about 20 or so minutes.
Yep.
Go Ozon, go O's. I love the short shows.
These are our favorite days. These are our favorite days.
Yeah, I'm not shy to admit I don't need to be on the air 2 hours every day. I'm happy to empty the bucket in short periods of time. I don't mind doing it, but like if I can get everything out in 20 minutes, it's better for everybody.
Well, especially now when finals are over with. We got a Stanley Cup that's about to end, but they don't even play tonight. It's the old dog days that are happening right now.
There's no training camp going on.
The chains are, the doors are locked over in Ashburn. These are the days where you earn the money.
I'm going to start reading the articles about minicamp buzz. It's just like, Anyway, let me go back to Team Ted and the Capitals, who, let's see, is this bad for bad? Is this, not that Darcy Kuemper was a bad guy, just bad contract.
Sure.
Didn't work out here now. 3 years left, making too much money, 30-plus years old. Ended up being benched. They don't like to say that stuff, but
correct.
He was basically out of the.
Just raising my hand that I was the first one.
Yeah.
I think I was saying it in November. You were kind of like, I don't know.
I hate when I'm right about certain things. When they signed him to that deal, I said, I don't know, guys. Like, he was on a really, really, really good team. Mm-hmm. He had a lot of leads.
Had the best defenseman in the league.
Best defenseman. They were scoring a ton. They were playing with leads. And then I looked at his metrics, and they weren't that good. They were average.
Yep.
And I went, well, what happens to the average goaltender when he doesn't have that type of team in front of him, which, unfortunately the Capitals aren't right now.
Right.
And we saw it. And last year, you'd correct me if I'm wrong, it looked like he lost his confidence. Like he looked out of sorts to the point where he was doing weird stuff, leaving the net, being wildly out of position. And then I think mentally the season wore on him. And this was year 2 of 5. So what were they going to do? Well, they did something about it. But, before we just kind of say goodbye, I didn't foresee it going like this. I didn't think it would be great.
Yeah.
This went worse than I thought. I thought he would be average and overpaid. I think he went a little sideways here. And, I'm happy for him that he gets a new spot. Because from what I've heard, he's a very good guy.
Yeah. He is. He's the few times I've dealt with him, he's a really nice human being. When it comes down to what you're talking about there from last year, too, his first year, remember, it wasn't that bad. But remember, the Caps defense corps was a mess. Remember, John Carlson was not the same, and he was banged up. Then he got hurt, and then the whole entire defense corps kind of fell like dominoes in front of him. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of look at that one and go, he made some good saves, but this is something I always talk about is you need the goalie to make the amazing save every once in a while, and he just didn't do that. And what they were paying him, it wasn't worth it.
They paid him like a top 10 goaltender, and he wasn't playing like it.
And the worst, I think the worst of it was last year where I always hate saying this out loud because it's ridiculous to say it, but I think there was a different team that played in front of him when he was in net compared to when Lindgren is net. Almost like the
team. It affects everybody.
Almost like
because it's one or two mistakes in that sport.
And they're done. Like
so when you go out there and you're like, God, I hope this guy doesn't.
They're gripping it.
They're
gripping it real hard. And so last year was the first time where even as somebody that is so close to it, I was going, oh God, every time he's out there, all the young defensemen are playing nervously because they know if they screw up one time, that's the mistake that loses them the game. And so that's where it really started to turn on him last season, where you could tell the team wasn't playing the same in front of him. And that's when it's really brutal. And so it was a combination of that. And then Lindgren was brilliant last year. And
he was. I'm a little concerned that let's not pretend that's a carryover here.
Sure, but
there's a touch of Joey Meneses.
Yeah,
where I'm like, everybody got like he'd been around the block a million times. He got an opportunity here.
Yeah,
he made the most of it, and I was going, that's great. Yeah. Please don't get caught. I've seen this too many times. Don't get caught up in, well, now he's an all-star.
Sure.
He may or may not be. I need to see it again. The great players either do it very early in their career or do it over and over later in their career.
Yeah.
And you're seeing what Meneses is now. He's an average player, right? That's, I think, what Lindgren to me could be, which is why I don't like. They don't have any other option but him right now. So that'll be interesting to see what they do.
So I think with him too, though, I think what's going to happen here is I like this move because now the Caps get to go to him and go, hey, it's June. We need you to prep like you're the number one guy.
Do they have somebody below him that they're going to bring up to be the number two, or are they going to acquire somebody?
Clay Stevenson is the guy that everyone's high
Hershey?
on. He's down in Hershey. He's the young guy they signed out of college. They signed him to an extension this past year. He's the guy they want to see. This is the thing with the NHL, though. You don't know what you're going to get with these goalies once they hit the NHL level.
Correct.
Like, go look at what happened with Samsonov and
we've actually had some bad luck
and your
with
boy. Who's the other one? Vitek. Your boy V for Victory.
V for Victory. Everyone baseline the expectations of we don't think he's great, but he could be good.
Right.
Samsonov was supposed to be really good. It just didn't work out that way. It's weird. They've had some bad luck with this. After having a pretty good run with goaltenders for a while,
run.
Yes, they've had some bad luck with this, and Lindgren was a nice stopgap.
Yes.
I just don't want them to get caught up in, well, now we need to pay him this amount. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like especially when the playoffs rolled around, actually, he was pretty good, not great. Like, he's not stealing games for you.
Yes.
So, like, he's not that type of player. But I appreciate they clearly like him. I love that his career turned into this. He clearly is the number one right now, but that's what I want to hear. Do they have another young guy? And maybe that person rotates in with Lindgren next year. We'll find out.
I think what's going to happen here is McClellan never likes to leave this up to rookies. I think if there's a pattern that there's two patterns with McClellan that I have found, and one is my favorite. It's one I tell you every time. When he says he's going to do something, he goes out and does it. He literally lays his plan out for the fans and the media to go, hey, we need 2 defensemen. I'm going to go sign 2 defensemen. He does it, right? Here's one thing that I think I've picked up over the last 5, 6, 7 years since he took over for George. He does not like leaving things up to these young players, no matter how ready they are. So I think what's going to happen here is they're going to sign a veteran goaltender. Not necessarily going to be the number 2 all year, though, but he's going to let Stevenson and give him a chance to win that number 2 job, or he's going to be the first guy called up right away. I'm fine with that.
As long as they don't make the mistake of going after a mid-tier player and overpaying them because they feel like they have a void.
I don't see that happening at all. He's going to go sign a veteran backup, and that's going to be it. But he's going to let Stevenson, compete for it. But he doesn't like. It's one thing that like the fan base they kind of clamor for. They want all these young guys to play. But McClellan, I think, is actually very leveled and usually goes, I'm going to bring in this extra veteran because if it doesn't work out with this guy, I'm not going to shatter his confidence. And then it all of a sudden hinges on the rookie being really, really good. And it's something I actually commend him for. He has kind of a level head through it all.
So they trade Kuemper. So they trade Kuemper, and I think he needed a new place to go.
Yep.
He had 3 years left on the contract. Getting anybody to take it, we knew would be hard because there was 3 years left. If he had 1 year left, I think there might have been more people who go, you know what, who are like goaltender needy. Let's give it a shot because it's just 1 year, but it's a commitment, and it's a guy in his 30s, and it didn't go well here.
Yep.
So the Kings are taking a chance on him.
Yes.
To get them to take a chance on him, we apparently had to pay a premium to do it. Albeit for a guy who's still very young, but now on team 4 or 5.
Yep.
He's had a lot of points in seasons, and people talk about him like he could be a star, but clearly, most of the time, stars aren't traded 3 times or move around 3 times.
Correct.
So, and the other side of it is the bet is a thick one because he's under contract for a long time.
Correct.
So they're paying him a premium number.
Yep.
It will be the second highest salary on the team currently, right? Higher than anybody but Ovechkin.
Yep. Ovechkin's
higher than
9.5.
Wilson.
Yep. He's 9.5. Pierre-Luc Dubois will be 8.5, and I believe Wilson's like 7.5, 7.6
right.
or something like that.
So excuse me for not watching a ton of Columbus or Winnipeg hockey and not a lot of Kings hockey recently because none of them were really contenders. And honestly, I'm not tuning in the Jets unless they're playing the Caps.
Right.
What is this guy?
All right, so let me give you the quick backstory. 3rd overall pick in 2016 with Columbus.
There's red flags on this dude.
Oh, of course, I 100% agree. But 3rd overall pick in 2016 with Columbus.
Okay, so he's a high-level talent.
Yeah, you know who works out in Columbus? Nobody. So let's call it.
Who was the one dude who did? The one, Nash. He was good.
Even then, he was traded to the Rangers, and he was a superstar in New York. But
yeah.
he was Mr. Blue Jacket, sure.
Yeah.
He's in Winnipeg. Plays there for 3 or 4 years, signs a normal deal. Then he gets traded from Columbus to Winnipeg. Okay? Winnipeg, for all intents and purposes, I'm not making excuses here, tough place to play.
So he was number 3 overall pick in Columbus.
Yes, correct.
They traded him to Winnipeg. Why? Because they didn't want to pay him?
I think he was signed to a contract. I forget what that contract looked like. I think it might have just been your normal RFA type thing. And I think if I remember correctly, that was a deal that involved a couple of guys that needed to have change of scenery. Like, I forget who it was. I don't know if that was Duchesne. There were a couple names, though, that not unlike this trade, it was a couple of forwards and defensemen that were like, let's give them
They
all
need to
new.
get out of Winnipeg, so they traded them, and they gave him this prospect who they weren't sold on to pay.
Correct.
Okay,
because,
all right.
And because he's the third overall pick. Yeah, like
this is good background because think about that for a second, okay? He came up in their system. He's really young. He's the number 3 overall pick, and they're not quite sure.
Correct. Here was the trade for here it is. I pulled it up. It was, this is what it was. I knew it was Patrick Laine. Patrick Laine, who scored a bunch of goals his rookie season with Winnipeg, was really good. People literally were comparing him to Ovechkin. He fell off, so they traded Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic for Pierre-Luc Dubois and a third-round pick. So just an exchange
so both
of
teams
talent.
think it's a win-win. Okay, great. Okay, I feel better about that now. Goes to Winnipeg.
Then the red flag of all of it is he signs a fat contract with Winnipeg. 8 years.
I thought he signed that with the Kings.
Sorry. You're right. Yes, sorry. But they still traded for Pierre-Luc Dubois.
He went. So keep me in the story here. He went to Winnipeg, and what happened? I thought he had a couple of big seasons with them.
He did, but
big number seasons.
But basically, I don't think Winnipeg wanted to trade him either, so they acquired the rights for Dubois and then signed him to that contract.
Winnipeg
the Kings did. The Kings did. So
right,
he was already on a shorter deal with.
Why did Winnipeg not want to retain him after making this deal to acquire him? We don't know.
We don't know because it was 2 years later, so we don't know.
This is not good.
So we don't know really what it was.
So now 2 years later, he's still young.
Yep.
23, 24.
Yep, 23, yeah.
Posting numbers.
Yeah.
Second team, third overall pick.
Yep.
Second team who doesn't want to commit to him.
Correct.
First one you could write off of trade of talent.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
I'll buy that.
Yep. Exactly.
What did they trade? What happened? How did the Kings acquire him?
So the Kings, the way that one was, is bear with me here. They traded 3 players. 2 of them were just the rights that went back to the Jets. Alex Iafallo, who's actually a name, and he's making $4 million, and a second-round pick all got traded to Winnipeg from the Kings. And then...
So then they bring him in and pay him.
Yes, correct.
Sight unseen.
Yes.
Third team pay him.
Right,
And they gave him an 8-year deal or
Correct.
7-year deal or something like that at a very high price.
It's set. I need to get this contract figured out. Hold on real quick. Okay. Sorry. This is my apologies here. Winnipeg did sign him to that deal, and then a year later they traded him to the Kings.
They traded him.
Yes.
Oh, so they did sign him.
They did sign him to that.
And then
that's my
after
bad.
he got the deal, whatever went sideways went sideways.
I think something happened here where Winnipeg, because it says here they signed him to a contract in 2023 and then traded him to the Kings. So there must have been some kind of sign and trade thing that happened there. I think that's
sign and trade.
That must have been what it was.
What I was reading last night was the Kings were essentially admitting they made a mistake by giving him this contract.
Correct.
So they gave him the
So
contract.
they must have been, to make the numbers work, it must have been
They
a
gave him the
quote-unquote
contract.
sign with Winnipeg and then move him for
Okay,
that. So
all
I
right.
think that's what.
So
I
they
think
do a
that's how it
sign and
works.
trade. He gets the massive contract from the Kings, and in a year he's gone.
Yes, correct. Literally a year. June 27th was when he was traded last offseason.
If you can trade somebody with that much time and that much money owed, you are breathing a sigh of relief.
Correct.
You want out bad.
Correct.
Now, they, just like us, had to take a quote-unquote bad contract to do it, but it's a much shorter
It's 3
stint.
years.
And people don't talk about Kuemper like there's a problem here. It's just, can we get him turned back around? And if they don't, well, then he's just not going to play and it's going to be money wasted, but it got them out of this other deal. The Capitals look at this and go, he's 25. If we can get him to buy into our system and be consistent, he's a really, really high-level talent. We need it.
Yep.
We need it right now. But that is a price to pay for somebody who's on Team 4 and is going to walk into what is typically a pretty tight-knit locker room, and he's going to be paid more than everybody but one guy.
Correct. And the guy that
That's quite a risk.
It's not only a risk. I will say this one thing about
Albert Hainsworth. This is a risk.
I will say this one thing about Kuemper too. He's a goalie. Tarek El-Bashir actually had my favorite comparison for goalies this season that I heard him talking with John Walton about. He compares them to relief pitchers in baseball. They might have a down year, but if a guy has pedigree, you can usually move him for something. Some team will take a chance on them. So with Kuemper, they could have actually kind of held on to him, and some contender might have come and gone, we'll give you a pick, retain half the salary. And that would have been off your books.
Maybe, yeah.
Now you have 7 years of this guy on your cap.
This is it's the second time they've done a very dangerous thing. I said this about Kuznetsov when they signed him to that deal. I said, he's not reliable enough to give him this contract. I see his talent and I understand it. And fortunately, they did win a Stanley Cup and he was amazing on that team.
Yep.
But most of the rest of it was a problem.
Yes.
Year in,
correct.
year out. It was some kind of problem, and it wasn't injury related. It was always motivationally related, or he had some issues,
Yes,
correct. Related.
Yes.
Or, he just, I don't know, he just mind wasn't in it.
Yeah.
Like for a while. Or
Yes.
like, then they're like play on the penalty kill.
Yes.
And you're like, he's on the penalty kill?
Penalty kill, right.
As trying to send a message to him, which didn't get through.
Correct.
And then every once in a while you'd see the flash of it again, and you're like, this guy's amazing. And that's why you have to pay him like that. But I don't know enough about this other person, but I'm sitting there going, are we history repeating by taking on a contract for someone who we're not going to be able to rely on, even though he's extremely high talent? Are we going to be doing this every year again going, well, if that just guy locks in, like in these, I just hope it gets off to a good start.
Well, here's the one thing that I will point to that, because I think you and I are on the same page here. This is rocky. It's a risk. I don't really like it.
That was a price to pay to get out of Kuemper's contract,
which I feel like they overpaid to get out of the contract.
100%.
But what I will say is this team and this organization has a culture, and one of the things that happens here is we're kind of like the car wash a little bit sometimes. We've never given a deal out like this.
For who? Who have we taken that's been distressed property from somebody? Because like Strome, I saw somebody, they're like, they brought Dylan Stroman. He wasn't a malcontent.
Correct.
Wherever he was.
But he was a guy in his 20s that didn't get re-signed by the Blackhawks, who were a terrible franchise.
But I never heard like, they got a problem with him.
Sure, but we haven't actually ever heard out of any literal problems with Pierre-Luc Dubois. We've just heard that like it's just not working out where he's been here. We haven't heard that he's a bad teammate or anything like this, but they like to sign some of these guys, and they end up kind of thriving. Like, we didn't know who Nick Dowd was when they signed him, and all of a sudden he's the best fourth-line center, maybe in the division.
We traded for Mantha. That didn't work out.
Didn't work out, and then to bring it, I was going to bring this up. Who did he thrive under? Spencer Carberry. Right. And all of a sudden that they got to trade him for a little bit of draft capital. And
Listen, I'm all for bringing talent, and they need it. I mean, it's weird to say it because they were so talented for so long that they are devoid of a lot of it. So I'm all for that. This is just a hefty price to find out if this is going to work out. And if it doesn't, you're stuck with him for 6 years unless you're willing to do a type of trade like this with somebody else again to take on their bad contract to get out of it. But at that point on Team 5, you're going to be hard-pressed. This is what happened with Kuznetsov. Had he just had his head on straight for a couple of years, they could have moved him earlier.
Yes.
But they never could because the money was just so unwieldy and no one trusted him.
Right. And so what I look at this is look at the two tails that you just mentioned there with Carberry specifically, because I think this is important here, because I think you point to the previous 3 head coaches. You point to Barry Trotz, you point to Todd Reardon, and you point to the worst of them was Peter Laviolette, trying to rehab or develop young guys. None of the 3 could do it, right? Carberry has seemingly, in year 1, flipped around some of these younger players and then took a guy like Mantha and gave him all the confidence in the world, so much so that he was traded for to a contender.
Well, I love my boy Carb, so this is
what I point to. This
new
is
challenge.
Carberry, come on down. Here's your first huge, humongous project, because if it doesn't work out with him, you're stuck with him. And he's going to get you fired, probably, is what's going to happen.
Yeah, he's more stuck with this guy than he is with Ovechkin, and for different reasons. But, you're stuck, quote-unquote, stuck with Ovechkin right now till he breaks this record, and he's going to give you what he gives you. And we saw last year, that's inconsistent at best.
Exactly.
We don't think there's an attitudinal problem or anything like that, which is what's interesting here about this. But this guy is your Kuznetsov. Fix him, and we've got a really good deal here. You don't, it's an albatross.
Yes. Correct. 100%.
And when Ovechkin does retire, he's going to be the highest paid player on the team.
That's right. Exactly. And so, yes, it's a major undertaking. But at the same time,
that's not my school of team building. That's scary. This is a big risk.
I agree. But he's also, once again, he's 25 years old. I mean, that's a lot of time to figure it out. He's entering his prime right now. And once again, I want to say I'm more on your side of the aisle. But
is McClellan getting desperate? Feels a little desperate.
I think it's hard to find a top 6 forward.
I agree with that.
And a top 6 center at that.
But right. But this goes back to like when everyone's like, go get a left tackle, go get an edge rusher. Yeah, teams don't get rid of them because there's a reason why they don't do it. Well, there's a reason why this guy was available.
Yeah. And so what I will say is
remember that part. And he's been available 3 times.
Yeah. What I will say is that was the Carberry part of things. Now, what we know though is when players come into this locker room, things settle down. it's Cap's dad's, right? It becomes all of a sudden you settle down. It's a family type locker room. These guys help
That's the organization I want. You come here, you'll get right here. Don't worry about it. We're not the other places.
Exactly. And so I kind of look at it like that the Caps are probably calling him going, dude, you're under contract for a long time.
Kyrie thinks it's a cult.
Right. Have Ted call it a cult.
Yeah.
The cult of the Capitals.
That's right.
So I think what happens here, too, is you look at the locker room and you go, you know what? These guys need you to succeed. So they're going to try to lift you up a little bit. If, Oshie does play this year, which we still don't know is going to happen, those are the types of guys that go, hey, man, just come and hang out with us. Like, we'll make sure you're okay. We'll help you figure it out. You got a girlfriend yet? We'll find you a girlfriend, get you married, and you'll have a kid by the time you're out of here in Washington, because that's what everybody does.
All right.
I like the locker room.
I love it here. I love it.
Right.
It's like Budapest. I love it.
So I'll say this, too, for both Kuemper and him as well, though. Flipping coasts, I think, helps some players, too. Kuemper mostly played in the West, so now he's back in the West. This guy, he now flips over to the East. Look at his markets that he played in. Columbus.
Goes to great
Winnipeg,
player. Right.
Then he gets L.A. Like, that was probably oh, my God, you get everything you want in that city all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And was probably a little bit of...
I love it.
A different kind of... He was sidecar Sammy.
Kristaps.
Sidecar Sammy.
Well...
If you're going to L.A.,
oh, man.
so I
all
think
right,
now
we'll see. Listen, I'm all benefit of the doubt and everything, but this one concerned me.
I agree.
That's
No,
all.
I'm 100% concerned, but I think you have to look at all the factors here. You go, you know what? If 3 of those factors work out, the guy's going to be really, really good with you. Let's hope that it works out that way, because Washington is not L.A.
I hope this isn't the desperate move that turns the culture of the whole thing sideways. That's what I'm actually, because to your point about they have a really good culture, obviously they do, which I appreciate. Like that they've built that. Well, you don't want to bring someone in who literally alters it.
The good part,
and that's the scary part with something like this.
The good part is Wilson's here long term, so I don't think you really have to worry about that. I think Wilson's got a good handle
Wilson's
on
gonna
that.
Fight him, great.
Well, I don't think I can say fight, but he's your captain really for all intents and purposes from here on out.
All right, we'll see. Real quick, so I watched the Orioles last night, and well, that felt like playoff series last night.
Yeah,
that was amazing.
It's been a great series so far.
Been a great little week here. They've had a heck of a month, and that was a good win for them last night. They won it. They blew a lead late. They got to extra innings. I'm with Scott Van Pelt and everyone else who thinks it's just dumb that they put people on second base. But whatever, they do. It gets the games over with. Gets the games over with. They don't want 5-hour games anymore. They're trying to get them over with. So at least it's exciting. And they scored 2 runs. They needed them both. And then the closer came in and got a pretty favorable call to get the last strike on the Yankees. And so we got a good rubber match coming up today. And, this feels like just watching the two of them. Now that Garrett Cole's I forgot that Garrett Cole hadn't pitched until, and they have the best record in the AL. He hadn't pitched yet and made his debut last night, which I think was a shot at the Orioles that,
I agree,
we think this series is important. We're going to bring him back for this. And he had, 4 innings, whatever it was last night. This, hopefully, because it'd be fun, would be the precursor to a series in October. But it's streaking that way. And the Yankees here in the middle of June are telling you how serious they think it is. They brought Garrett Cole back specifically for this, and then they won a game last night that felt like a playoff game. So that was fun.
I think if you're the Orioles, too, no matter what happens today, I look at that Phillies series where they were really good. They only lost 1 game in extra innings, right? Then they're playing the Yankees here, and they've hung tough with them for both games, especially with last night. I think you're looking at that going, we feel really good because we're going to add something
100%.
here. We're going to add something here to help us put us over the top. They're going to add, too. The Yankees are, for sure. But I think you feel really good about the series no matter what happens, in the next half an hour, because I think you're hanging with all these teams tough, and you're banged up. You're missing a couple starters. Your relievers aren't amazing. Like, you're actually doing this thing kind of duct taped together a little bit. Granted, you have your talent, your MVP candidates on the bats, but you're not perfect by any means, and you're at where you're at. I think you're feeling really good after the last week or so.
I think so. So rubber match is coming up here next on ESPN 630. So we'll be back with you tomorrow at 3. Talk to you then. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, Sports Capital.